Good afternoon and welcome to the Conversation Tree. It's a wonderful Sunday evening. And this evening we'll be looking at youth-led activism on climate change. And you'll also learn about an event, the Clinton Global Initiative, which is part of the UN General Assembly Week. And we have a host that would be leading the discussion all the way from the UK, Michael Morgan. And before I waste any more time, I'll bring in Michael to lead the show this evening. Good afternoon, Michael.
Good afternoon, Stanton. Thank you so much.
How are you doing? How's the UK today?
It's good. It's good. I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to the discussion. I'm really excited.
Right. So you're the new host today. So take it away. Yeah. I'll be out.
Yes, so today we're going to be speaking about youth-led activism on climate change, specifically in the Caribbean. And this is kind of preview to the upcoming event at the UN General Assembly, being hosted by the Clinton Global Initiative. So I'd like to first introduce Gauri Patel from the Clinton Foundation to give us some introductions. And we're also going to be having Rosalie Pinnock from Caribbean Girls Act. She's actually a Caribbean Girls Act ambassador. And we're also going to have Sydney, who's also from Caribbean Girls Act and currently studying at Columbia University. Hi.
Is everyone?
Hi, Sydney. So, yeah, let's just start. While we get the others in the room, just tell us a little bit about your involvement with Caribbean Girls Hack. Yes.
So hi, I'm Sydney. I've been working with Caribbean Girls Hack for a couple of months now, and it's been a great experience. It's Caribbean Girls Hack is a initiative to get more girls into tech and the digital economy, and trying to create to close that gap in the gender gap between men and women in technology. And my position has been program development. We just launched a Caribbean Girls Hack Ambassador program along with Rosalie that you'll hear more about. That allows girls to have a lot of tech opportunities and empowerment activities, because it's one thing to be a woman in tech, but it's also that piece of empowerment and getting yourself immersed in like the woman and like girl community. And that's what Caribbean Girls Hack is about, and that program is about. And I'm at Columbia University studying sustainable development, so this initiative really resonates with me as I study sustainable development. One of the sustainable development goals is having more women in the technology field. So thinking about that and how that also relates to technology, relates to also climate change, a crisis right now that we're going through, and how do we use all the innovation that we have and creativity that we have to kind of overpower what climate change is kind of bringing. So that's what we Caribbean Girls is about, and something that we'll discuss some more.
Yeah. So Caribbean Girls Hack will be featured at one of the events in the week on Tuesday, which will focus specifically on youth-led activism in the Caribbean. So Gauri, maybe introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about the event overall and what people can look forward to.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Michael. And it's an honor to be here with you all. So thank you so much for the opportunity. My name is Gauri Patel. I am a partnerships manager with the Clinton Global Initiative, or CGI. And it might be also helpful just to give you, and those that may not know, a quick background on what CGI is and what our work is focused on in the Caribbean. And so, and then I can go into the role in the event as well. So CGI launched what we call the Action Network on Post-Disaster Recovery back in 2017 in direct response to the devastating impacts of Hurricanes Irma and Maria. And so what started off as really a collaborative platform for organizations to coordinate their response efforts has now evolved into this network of over 700 organizations representing government, business, and civil society coming together and committing to building a long-term resiliency strategy in the region. And so to drive this sort of collaboration among partners, CGI hosts events like we'll see next week, workshops and roundtable discussions, all aim to bring people to the table, to spark knowledge sharing and resource sharing, to foster partnerships, and then to ultimately develop specific projects, what we call commitments to action, that address the challenge at hand. And so where my role fits into all of this is bringing together leaders specific to the education sector. And I do that by really learning and listening to the challenges that are being faced by those communities and then leveraging the network to really drive resources and address those challenges. Yeah. And so as we all know, this year has been just extraordinarily difficult with the pandemic disrupting education and us needing to really work with our leaders and communities to figure out how students are going to access connectivity, how teaching materials are going to be adapted and distributed equitably. And I also think, thinking about how we're going to address the psychological impacts that the pandemic has caused students and their families as well. And so all of these things, I think, are very relevant to the topic of conversation today here and what we're going to be talking about on Tuesday in terms of youth empowerment and activism, thinking about how to really equip young people with the tools they need to continue learning and to lead us towards a more socially progressive future. And I think in my work for the past couple of years, what I've learned is just so foundational to all of this is the inclusion and elevation of the voices of those young people, because we know that ultimately that's going to help us inform where those resources are going and where they're needed and where we should all be coming together and bringing our attention to. So I think, when we talk about empowering young people and especially young women of color, I think it's crucial that we're lifting each other up using these types of forums. And that's really what the event coming up is all about, is really leveraging these platforms to build power, to spark youth engagement, because we know that's what sort of leads to this great work that Cindy mentioned and what I know Rosalie will talk about as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. I feel like, especially now with COVID-19 and how it's really creating an unprecedented situation in terms of perfect storms, for example. Now we have a hurricane season. Now we're seeing increased hurricanes. We're seeing the wildfires in California and Oregon. We're seeing the impact of climate change. And I think that, harnessing or spotlighting the initiatives of young people is very important. And, Caribbean Girls have focusing on, really trying to bridge that gap and get more females involved in tech. In a more practical way in terms of jobs, but also seeing themselves as persons who can actively contribute. And I think that a manifestation of that is the Caribbean Girls Hack Ambassador Program. So I like to bring in Rosalie to just introduce herself and tell people about what the program is about and how you're going to be engaging throughout at the event on Tuesday.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm saying hello to all the persons who have tuned in already. It's an honor to be a part of this space with these two outstanding women who I've had the pleasure of working with at some point in time. Sydney would have mentioned that we worked on the Caribbean Girls Hack Ambassadors Program. Sydney is a phenomenal girl in the tech space and also in the climate change and sustainable development space. And then Gloria had the pleasure of meeting earlier this year, and she's just been somebody who is a backbone of the Clinton Global Initiative and really promoting these conversations. I'm very happy to be here. I am what I call a sustainability innovator, which means that I work on tech solutions that would bring about some form of sustainability to the region. And I just, I've been a student at the University of Technology studying information systems. So just my love for the environment and protecting that and having sustainable systems in our communities with my tech background is really what I have been bringing to the table in terms of discussions and just engagement overall. And I'm very excited. So I recently learned that I'll be participating in the UN General Assembly Week, a part of the Clinton Global Initiative activities as a moderator for their youth-specific engagement session. And I'm just very thrilled to be meeting, those Caribbean youth who are doing extraordinary things and inspiring other youth all across the world. I think Caribbean voices matter, and this is an opportunity to amplify those voices and let people know that, hey, we have some incredible activists in the Caribbean who are doing phenomenal things, and they deserve to be, seen and supported and empowered even further. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I feel that the work, sometimes young people can feel like our work isn't being spotlighted enough, and we have strong work ethic, we have strong views on issues like climate change and especially the COVID recovery. But I would like to put that on the general umbrella of just sustainable development and sustainability. And Sydney, what do you think are, in terms of the Caribbean region, how can we use sustainable development as a framework for, recovering stronger from COVID-19 and also dealing with the challenges from climate change?
Yeah, that's a really big question, and I know that we've been in discussion about this, but I think that sustainable development provides a very kind of stable framework that kind of keys in on a lot of different points that gender equality, climate change, jobs, resilient communities, water, all these different things that kind of come together to at the baseline of people and the planet and profit. My issue though with the sustainable development framework, I think, is that it still is still using profit as its motivating factor. And I think with that, we're as a Caribbean region, and this is something where I've still been like thinking about and working through, but I think that what the sustainable development framework provides is some clarity in what we need to get done and some goals that we need to achieve. Right. But I do think that there needs to be more community-based building and like grassroots level building that is focused on like people and the planet like first. Right. as priority, not based off the market economy and so forth. And I think with COVID-19, it's shown that like we can't depend on the market economy. We have to, when things are going wrong, like what helps is when communities come together. and like mutual aid communities where they're sharing resources, they're sharing like tools and stuff is where we need to kind of start. And that also comes from education. I think a part of this conversation is climate change and technology, but also education. And I think that's so important because the more we become educated about the systems that we're actually in and the systems that like kind of have become the dominant systems, we start to question like is the UN or the governments what they say, is that what we should all be following, like one framework? I think we have to start incorporating other frameworks, other ideas from a more grassroots level to then push forward that beyond like the capitalist development that sustainable development kind of leans on, even though when we talk about it, we say, oh, the people, the profit, planet, all that great stuff. It's still like, how are we doing that? How do we want to make a resilient society? How do we want to use technology in a innovative way, but also a responsible way, not based on just profit, like not like, how do we think about renewable energy? There's just, we have to think about sustainable development more, I think, critically in the Caribbean. And I think that, but I do think at the same time, right now where we are, it's a framework that we kind of almost have to depend on, because of how also dependent the global north makes us onto them.
Definitely. That thing about the grassroots level is something super important to me, because I feel like a lot of times there are persons in the boardroom, and they have these ideas about, like a high level thinking about what they want to happen. But there are people on the grassroots level who are actually on the front lines of these issues. And sometimes if they don't see themselves being reflected in the policies, then that creates a disconnect. And then the disconnect just translates into not, actually solving the issue. I was wondering, Rosalie, what do you think about, what young people can do to help drive, kind of bridging that gap through the activism?
Yeah, so I think that first, with like demystifying what engagement in climate change activities looks like, right? So a lot of youth, so this topic can be a bit high level, as you rightly said, right? We have different activities happening that we haven't seen before, and our environment is really responding to the actions that we're taking in terms of like pollution and stuff, right? So we have an increase in natural disasters and all of that. So I think that demystifying that process is like paramount. Like, how do youth get engaged in the first place is what we need to answer, right? So I think that engagement doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a technical expertise in the area of climate change or environmental engineering or tech for that matter, right? You can definitely work on that, but that is not a prerequisite for you to get involved in a movement. The movement requires people who recognize that there is a problem fundamentally with where our world is heading or where our community is at right now. So once you can clearly identify a problem that exists, you're halfway there, right? Once you can identify it and express it, right? And that's very coherent for you. I think that's the first step, right? So I think that definitely the issue of the boardrooms having their separate discussions is a problem, right? So we have had an issue where we have our developed nations and then we have our small island developing states or developing nations. And what seems to be a reoccurring problem is that the developed nation, they come up with their framework, and then our small islands kind of work on implementing those framework. I think having more representation in the dialogue and the consultation processes is important. Before we get there, youth can definitely play a part. And I think playing a part is as simple as a conversation like this that we're having, right?
Definitely.
Because, exactly. Because we're the persons who live in the communities, and we're the persons who are able to identify very clearly like what is going on the ground. And believe it or not, we have the solutions. Like, we know how to brainstorm and say, okay, this will work. We can get cooperation from these private sector individuals or these civil groups, So I think that just breaking down the problems into like just smaller action items is like a key part of activism. So just to close on this, I would like to say that, pollution is like a problem. I don't know about like all the Caribbean states, but I know like in Jamaica, we do have a problem in terms of like just disposal of garbage or, other types of pollution. Yeah.
I mean, we side with the recent rains and like places that don't usually flood, because of the improper drainage and the disposal of garbage. We just see, and these are some real life effects that are going to be happening in places that you would not usually think, and they are going to be disrupting, people's ability to, disrupting movement, disrupting infrastructure, and it's a really, really big problem.
Precisely, Michael, like precisely. And yeah, just to go on your point, we're seeing where like pollution is a problem, and just organizing an activity around cleanup is like seems a very simple fix, but it's actually very profound and really goes to the heart of what needs to be done, definitely. So I think just empowering youth to know that, okay, if you see this as an activity that needs to be done in your community, we will support you. And I think youth is not really about like amplification of voices and giving them a spotlight to share their experiences. It's more about the support that will come as a consequence of that, because people can't really support you if they don't know that you're doing something, right? Yeah. So I think sharing stories, that's what makes it so powerful. When you share your stories, people know, okay, you're doing that. I'm also interested in that. How can we work together? And I think unity and collaboration is also like a big part of the activism process and actually getting real positive change. Yeah.
Real positive change. Yeah, the idea about, I think it's, a lot of times, especially people might see us as young people in these, situations. We're having a live event with someone from the Clean Global Initiative, and they might be like, that's the only way to engage. But I really want young people to realize that organizing a beach cleanup, talking to your friends, letting them understand that it's a on-the-ground grassroots movement that will help to create sustained change. Because it's all about the small actions adding up, and then reaching a wider cross section. But at the same time, we have to realize that the high level dialogue is extremely important, and that's why I want to bring in Gori from about the event coming up, about what does the Clean Global Initiative see in terms of the vision for sustainability in the Caribbean, and how do they engage with private sector and public sector partners to help advance that vision.
Definitely. And just to echo all of your points, I think representation of youth is a huge piece of this. And, there's a role for all of us to play, whether that be from the grassroots level or from the private public sector partnership level. And I think what I can speak to here is just the vision that's rooted in collaborative efforts on all of those fronts. And so when we talk about our vision forward in terms of sustainability, in terms of the response to COVID and the recovery to that, I think it's about really finding a balance in terms of what does that mean long term, in terms of what do we need to invest in now to build resiliency and resilient infrastructures and an economy, but in the short term, being able to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, the upcoming hurricane season, and of course, at the same time of all of this, building mass movements on the ground from a grassroots level. And so I think everyone has a role to play. I think, youth being at the table from the start is going to lead us even further than if we wait to include them later. And so I think it's just more crucial than ever to be able to facilitate not only these conversations, but tactical calls to action and partnerships across islands and across every sector to meet these challenges. And I think one project that comes to mind that was launched through the CGI Action Network as a commitment that really encompasses all of these points is a project called Solar Saves Lives, which has been a mass collaboration effort to install solar and storage systems at primary care clinics in Puerto Rico. And so, as you guys know, after Hurricane Maria, there was mass power outages that stretched for months and months. And President Clinton and the CGI Action Network had organized a call with leaders from the clean energy space to come together, and they agreed that the emerging solar industry in the US could actually come in and make an impact here. And so recognizing that health clinics and hospitals were of particular interest in terms of reliable electricity, we were able to bring together partners and larger organizations to the table to install and to really front the resources for these projects. At the same time, though, going back to what you've all mentioned of the engagement of youth, I think there are also partners in the space that are now working to create tangible pathways and opportunities for young people to enter this field. by expanding certification, by increasing access to training and on-the-job learning, and to really empower young people as the leaders of this industry in our future. So I think projects like these really highlight how all of these topics intersect at one way or another, in that engaging youth, I guess, from the start is really the approach to long-term resiliency, given their role as our future leaders and as sort of the front lines of climate change.
Definitely. Rosalie, about the involvement of young people, I feel like a lot of young people, again, think that they can't, engage if it's not at some, high, quote unquote, high level. But speak a little bit more about your role as an ambassador and what you want young girls in Jamaica specifically, but the Caribbean overall, to understand about their ability to engage with tech, and then how they can use tech to, cross-cut and impact different sectors such as climate change, gender equality, just how they can, engage with it.
Wow. Every time I get asked about how I get involved with Caribbean Girls Hack, I just can't help having like a big, broad smile, because this just happened last year, April. So my involvement with CGH is just a little over a year now, but I can definitely say it's been like an incredible journey. And I would encourage young people to be a part of, platforms like CGH, and there are others in Jamaica as well, and I can imagine across the Caribbean, like Youth Can Do IT, and just other groups that you can join. So I, as I said, became a part of CGI, not CGI, but CGH last year in April, and Nicole and Bridget were the founders of Caribbean Girls Hack. They organized a hackathon, right? It was a yearly thing. And I remember we were on the staircase and Nicole came and said, okay, girls, we have this hackathon. We'd love for you to join. My friends and I got together, and the two themes were climate change and gender-based violence. And we chose to go climate change. And just being a part of the hackathon, it was like no other hackathon we've ever been a part of. So you had to do, activities outside of coding or outside of creating your tech solution, like tree planting. So we had to plant several trees, just at any location that we chose, just to be a part of, like actual action to and actual reforestation efforts. So I really love that. And I always knew that I cared about the environment, because that's where we get like our food from, that's where we get all the resources that we convert into things that make us experience like a good quality of life, right? Our natural resources are very important to our livelihoods, and wherever a disconnect happens is where we need to really go back to the drawing board and understand that we depend on the earth for survival, and that means that we have to take care of it, right? So just participating in the hackathon and then having the Green Dream solution and winning the hackathon, and just all the activities and engagement that came from that is definitely has been a blessing. What I would say to young people is that, we can achieve extraordinary, goals on our own, right? We can do great things on our own. But when we come together, that's when we really create movements, powerful, impactful movements. Because now it's not only your perspective and your skill set, but it's the perspectives and skill sets of so many other people. And that is like a powerful thing. So definitely being a part of a community of like-minded people, I would say, is like the first, or like a very important part of the process. So I would definitely say get involved with groups like CGH and other groups across the Caribbean. And that is where you actually get to implement also, tangible solutions. So from developing that application, I have, along with the other girls who are on the team, gotten opportunities to speak about it and to let people become aware of, the fact that we can use AI to solve this climate change issue, or that we can use gamification, to solve this climate change issue, and just speak about the use cases. Yeah. So definitely.
My God, one thing I just wanted to touch on with Rosalie, that I think that's, when you talk about community, I think that's one of the biggest things about the ambassador program that I want to push, is that we're a group of girls that are all about women empowerment and development and in technology, and that we're coming together to all make ourselves stronger, but the community strong. And with that, when you find community, especially as a youth, I think like find community with people that have similar interests as you and so on. That's when like the mobility can start and the more engagement. Because I personally, I think when you're around more like-minded individuals, you have more incentive, more motivation to kind of push whatever issue you're passionate about. And I think that's what the ambassador program and CGI and all these different initiatives is trying to like push. And I think that's what's important about like youth in climate change, youth in tech, youth, all of, because everything is also connected. Like youth, youth in tech, youth in food, like it's all connected. And I think that's also very important when we think about sustainability and like moving forward, because we're the ones that are going to have to deal with all the different issues that we're going to be faced with. We're the ones that are going to have to think to work together and see how we can make a better world, you know.
Definitely. I really like to, we're in the Caribbean trying, talking about sustainability from a wide perspective. So I want to give another opportunity to another young person, Ashfred Norris from Dominica. Hi, Ashfred.
Hey, Michael. Hi, everyone.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about what you've been doing in terms of climate change specifically, but also, climate change, but also if you've been working on other sustainability projects.
Okay. Once again, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Ashfred Norris. I am from the beautiful island, the niche island of the Caribbean, Dominica. And in terms of climate change and my engagement in the topic, I am an activist in the area. However, my involvement in it started soon, right after Hurricane Maria devastated my country. This was an event that we never really anticipated. So when Hurricane Maria struck the island, it was really a reckoning, an awakening moment for me as a young person. So got involved with the UNDP, did a lot of stuff with them, and came back to Dominica. And I just decided that it's time to get more young people rallied up and involved in the discussion. So since I've gotten back, on the topic of climate change, I have organized some different forums where you can some youth can come together, share their experiences, talk about what they know about climate change. It's all in an effort to build capacity around climate change, because if you realize a lot of young people, especially in the Caribbean, we're not so aware, or we're not deeply involved in climate change as let's say the young people in the larger countries. Climate change is integrated into their curriculums, it's integrated into this schools, sorry. And in the Caribbean, I would probably say that we are kind of lagging behind in terms of integrating that much needed topic and discussion into our educational institutions. So my work right now is just building capacity around it. I do a radio show every other Sunday on a radio station in Dominica, and we basically speak about different developmental plans and programs that we want to see in the island, and one of the areas that we really focus on is climate change. So apart from that, I'm also a board member of the Dominica Youth Environment Organization, where we work to build capacity as it relates to environmental conservancy, as well as I am the co-director of the Youth Climate Change Activist, a regional organization, which Michael is also part of, regional youth organization in 8 different Caribbean countries, where we strive to, connect more young people across the Caribbean on the topic of climate change, to ensure that, to let them know that you're not alone in this fight, and there are other like-minded individuals such as yourself combating the same issues that you are fighting.
Definitely. And I think like, especially now, people see we're dealing with COVID-19, and there's so many impacts, and I think in the Caribbean specifically is extremely vulnerable. And I want, if Gore could speak a little bit more about how events on Tuesday, but also the different days would go through helping or speaking about the Caribbean and how it's going to build out a vision to recover from COVID-19 and climate change.
Yeah, so I'm
sorry. You can go ahead. I'll go after.
Sounds good. Michael, I think you cut out just a tiny bit, but I'm happy to go over some of the events of next week. Was that the question?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I think just listening to everyone's thoughts here is just super inspiring, and I think we'll lead into this week of action is what we're calling it. And it's going to be hosted by President Clinton and Chelsea Clinton, and it kicks off tomorrow at 2 p.m. Where President Clinton will be joined by heads of state, including Prime Minister and other leaders, to really set the stage of how to address all of these issues that have been taught in terms of climate change while grappling with the impacts of COVID-19. So that's going to be our first event tomorrow, again, 2 p.m. Eastern. And then on Tuesday, which is the event that we've all been referring to and super excited about here, again, it's going to be at 2 p.m. Eastern. And it's going to be the youth activism event moderated by Rosalie. And so I will let her and Sydney and others, as really the true leaders and experts in this, share more. The session was really put together around the thinking that young people are the pioneers of not only the resilient, a more inclusive and a more equitable approach to solving climate change. And so we're really excited to talk about youth activism and why it's so crucial that we've all touched on the fact that, representation of young people, both on the ground at the grassroots level and at the decision-making table, is going to be so important in terms of developing policies and coordinating around all of this. In terms of some of the speakers and agenda items, we're going to be hearing from Dr. Hakeem Williams, who's a professor of peace and justice studies at Gettysburg College, to kind of set the stage and help us reflect on the history of the region and bring us to where we are today. And then we're going to go into our panel discussion with a lot of program leads that work with youth. And so we're really excited for your questions for them and really kind of pushing them to think about all of these pieces that we want to be included in curriculum and the empowerment conversation. And then lastly, we're going to be hearing from the chairperson of the Commonwealth Council to send us up with a call to action and really bring in the audience and, again, promote the engagement of youth, but also be able to talk to all these organizations that will be in our audience on how they can be part of making it accessible, making it more part of their programs in terms of engaging and empowering them and equipping them with the skills that they need. And then quickly, the fourth event will be on Wednesday, 23rd, again at 2 p.m. Eastern. And that one's going to be focused on renewable energy and how to develop financing strategies to make renewable projects more accessible. And then lastly, on Thursday, again at 2 p.m. Eastern, Chelsea Clinton will be hosting a conversation around the challenges that COVID has posed to healthcare providers and public health officials in the region. And so when we think about some of the gaps prior to COVID in healthcare and then how they've been exacerbated from the pandemic, I think this conversation is really going to be about prompting new approaches to administering basic healthcare services. So thinking about telehealth, bringing in some of the technology innovations that have also been mentioned and how to address that as well. So a huge week of lots of different conversations, lots of critical conversations, and all of them are really important for us to be a part of and for you to be a part of and engage in and ask questions about and have your perspective present. And so we would love for everyone to tune in and to receive more information in the registration link. You'll have to email cgiactionnetwork@clintonfoundation.org or find all of this information on our website at clintonfoundation.org. I hope that covers everything.
Yes, thank you so much for the comprehensive overview of what's going to be happening. Rosalie, speak a little bit. You're going to be moderating one of the panels on Tuesday, right?
Still surreal,
Yes,
but yes.
still surreal. We don't worry. CGS sends you off with all our blessings, and Caribbean is 100% behind you. So as the moderator, what will you be bringing, and what's your message as a female person of color from the Caribbean who's been consistent working on activism? What's your message?
Yeah, so it's about helping the other women. So I'll be speaking to 3 other Caribbean phenomenal women who are doing great things in the space as well, and just hearing about their experiences. So that should be interesting. So I'm definitely encouraging you to join, to tune in, and to just check that out. We have, I think, one from St. Croix, if I'm not mistaken, and Trinidad and Tobago, and just lots of representation. So that should be an interesting conversation. I think from my part, what I would want other youth to know is that, if you have a passion, if you have something that you care about, then you personally validate that. So validate your own passions. It begins with you just recognizing that you have that inclination for a reason, and that you need to use it because it's going to be a part of your superpower in this world. And we all need more superheroes, and people who are just doing great things to make our planet and our space a better place. So I definitely think if you have something you care about, then believe in it. And then you definitely need partnership, as I said before. Doing things on your own is fantastic, but we achieve so much more as a community. We achieve so much more when we're unified. And I definitely would say that in this day and age, you cannot afford anybody's opinion about, whether or not you deserve to be in this space to prevent you from doing what you need to do. I definitely think that maybe that is a challenge that, young people in the Caribbean, face, because we have not necessarily been presented with many opportunities, but I think that is definitely changing. And with organizations like CGI and CGH, that is really changing that scenario. So I definitely think if you care about something, get involved in it, get people around you who care about the same thing, and just work on some action items. You can definitely reach out to our organizations if you need support and empowerment and that kind of thing. But definitely don't think limitations. Don't think that because you're a woman, you can't speak up, And I think it's harder than many people are willing to admit, right? Because even in, just the workplace or a group that you're part of, sometimes you feel as though you're wondering, should I share this? Will people care about what I'm about to say? Am I qualified enough to speak on this thing? Like, these are actual fears that we have as just human beings. We worry about being judged, or we worry about how we're going to be perceived. But I say that you enrich the discussions when you share your story and your perspectives. People are going to literally thank you for sharing that. And it makes our solutions way better because it's more inclusive. And it also speaks to the heart of the problems that we have. So enrich the discussions that you're part of by sharing, and don't be afraid of it. If you're wrong, you're wrong. But I definitely think that if you have a gut feeling, you're probably right. So definitely share and enrich your discussions. Just don't be afraid to challenge the status quo as well. Just go out there and be great. We were definitely created for a time like this. Yes. And that is why we're here in this moment of history. So just make the most of that.
Definitely. Absolutely. I feel like, young people are very in tune. to what's happening now. A lot of people have ideas, and as you said, it's about moving past some of the fears and speaking up, because when you speak up, there are like-minded persons who will rally around you, and then that creates a spark, and then there are other systems in place for you to get more exposure, get more spotlight, get more funding for some of your ideas. Recently, we're working with the Caribbean Youth Environment Network in Jamaica, specifically trying to get this project rolled out. So we have to, engage the funding partners, figure out what our values are, what we actually want to see in the communities, and then do the legwork, fill out the forms, do the research, figure out what the budget is going to be like, propose it, follow up. There are these, I think a lot of people see the end result and don't understand that there are many small steps that come together to make something a reality. So if there are people in the comments right now, just if you have any questions, just let us know. What you want these wonderful young people to answer, and get their perspective on different issues. Yes.
And I just have one thing to add on to Rosalie again, is that I think the importance of that confidence building and that critical consciousness that you can be a leader, you can do what you want to do, and you can be a force of change, is like very, very like important. That and that's work that also comes on us to do as well, like making people more comfortable forming groups or organizing or any of those things. Like that confidence building is so important. Like I did a program in Grenada the other day, not the other day, like 2 years ago, and it's really about like identity building and empowerment and like building that critical consciousness that like I can be that force of change, and I think that's so just important as youth, like from and not just like us, like from grade 5 and 6, because that's the ages that we target, is like getting them to think that they can do that. It's just so important, like that, to build that momentum.
Yeah, definitely build that momentum. And that discussion about having a confidence, I think, comes from not understanding that your youth perspective is something that it's in demand, because a lot of times, again, those people in the boardrooms and people at a high level sometimes are looking at an issue and some of their perceptions might be clouded by their past experiences, but we have a fresh perspective, a fresh outlook. And once you can be very confident in, speaking your truth, standing in your truth to communicate that fresh perspective, get other like-minded people, because I think a lot of young people don't want constructive criticism, but that's one of the best things that you can getting constructive criticism to form more wholesome opinions, and then with that community stepping out to offer that fresh perspective. So Ashford, I know that you've been doing a lot of work, and tell us a little bit about what has happened, with Maria in Dominica, and how that experience, because I remember at the previous conference we were talking about how I think you said like there was a first time that you had money but there was nothing to buy. So speak some more about the real impacts of climate change for people in the Caribbean.
Yeah, so Michael, Maria was really it was really a disaster. That's the only way I could really describe it. We actually just, I don't want to say celebrated, but we recognized the 3rd year anniversary of its passing this last Thursday. And one thing that a psychologist she said on the day of the recognition was that whenever you're sharing your Maria memories and so forth, your pictures, your stories and so forth, just be mindful of the people out there who are still traumatized, the people out there who are still suffering from PTSD. And just put a little disclaimer or something like that before actually putting it out there, because there are people out there who are still troubled by what they saw. And I can say that I was one of those people. Whenever I saw someone post something about Maria, picture or something, I mean I just scroll past your feed for the day, because that was not something that I wanted to be reminded about, because it's just a lot of um different memories that are linked to negative emotions. And that is one of the psychological ways in which climate change actually impacts our young people. As the youth, our generation, Michael, you can imagine that you can think of us as a bit more mentally aware, or a bit more aware of our mental health, as opposed to our parents and so forth. So we see how important it is to take mental health checkups and so forth. So whenever we see something like climate change having a disaster impact our island, we tend to be a bit more protective about our mentality. When you try remember about the time that you went to the city to try to get some basic necessities, and you cannot purchase anything because most of the stores are damaged. A lot of the stores are have been devastated by the rain, the water, the winds. The rivers also played a
Yeah.
major part. Today, I just came up from a radio program where we actually spoke about our rivers and the different uses and how our rivers actually impact our community. And just thinking that if the place wasn't even damaged by the hurricane itself, or the people came in and they damaged the supermarkets, the stores, they looted and so forth, because in that moment everyone is frantic, everyone is afraid, no one has really been through this before. You can have all the planning in place, you can have all the protocols in place and so forth, but when people are in panic mode, there's no way really that you can necessarily control that situation. We had the National Guard out, we had the police were out, they were trying their best to control the situation. However, people were afraid and they were scared. So these are some of the effects that I have seen first-handedly from climate change, how it impacts our communities and how it impacts our environment. And from a youthful perspective, from a youth point of view, I just feel that our governments, the people who are in charge, our decision makers, they need to take these things into consideration. It's not just about building back better, building back stronger, more resiliently, or thinking about the building codes and so forth, but thinking about the people that are being affected. You can build back my physical infrastructure, you can build back my home, but what about my my mind? Can you necessarily build back my mind? So now you have to think about this aspect of climate change that I am not really hearing much about, which is the mental health aspect about it. We can have the best walls to protect us from the rivers. We can have the best infrastructure. We can have the best of the best when it comes to as prepared as you think we can get. But if you're not mentally prepared, if you're not ready for that, then at the end of the
Yeah.
day, that all goes to waste, and you cannot necessarily, I don't think there's a way that you can adequately prepare someone mentally for a disaster like a category 5 hurricane, which a lot of people, and that's again in the mental preparation. When it came to Hurricane Maria, we anticipated a category 2 to a category 3 hurricane.
Yeah.
The storm literally turned to a Cat 5 while it was on Dominica. So imagine not having that information. There was actually a guy in Dominica who did a documentary on it. It's called Uncivilized, where he camped out in the forest, and someone from a nearby village, they heard of this storm coming and they heard that he was camping out in the forest. So they went to him and they told him, okay, we're expected to have a category 2 or category 3 storm hurricane passing by you. I mean, you should take cover. And he's like, well, I grew up in the Caribbean, I grew up in Dominica, category 2,
Yeah.
category 3 hurricanes. They're nothing we're used to these type of things.
Yes.
So he stayed there and he did not necessarily expect for it to turn to category 5, and he had to survive in the forest during a category 5 hurricane. So I think that when it comes to mental preparation, we really need to take that into consideration as it comes to climate change.
Yeah. I'm seeing a question from the chat about how you can get involved as a student if CYN is not at your school. Well, we're always on social media. You can specifically reach out to us on Twitter at CYENJA, and then we can then link you to, if you're in another Caribbean country, we can link you to their networks as well, and help you to understand how you can be an active member of CYN, because there are many different avenues for you to definitely participate. So I wanted to, go back to this idea of the intersectionality and how the, many different things, as you're talking about, mental health are related to the effects of some of the impacts of climate change, your mental health issues, with COVID-19 and having to totally change our lives. There needs to be some framework that talks about how we can leverage technology, and use applications or other means to help with through things like telehealth, and just putting in place infrastructure that realizes that there are many cross-cutting impacts of both COVID-19 and climate change, and they're almost converging at this point because of the season we're in, and because we're at the height of the pandemic, or we don't know what's to come, definitely. Rosalie, I want to get some more tangible information about how girls can reach out to you as an ambassador, if they're interested in Caribbean Girls Hack, and if they have any questions or they want to get more introductions into the organization.
Okay, so for Caribbean Girls Hack, I think we have an Instagram page, and I think Sydney can give it the exact handle. I think it's CGH Girls. Sydney, you can jump in.
CGH Girls Hack _.
Perfect. And the girls has a Z, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And I also want to just give my email out there. So we have the UN Major Group for Children and Youth has this group called SDG 7 Youth Constituency, which focuses on clean energy. And they especially want to get youth in the Caribbean rallied around clean energy. So the energy aspect of things, given that a fossil fuel based industry has been causing, lots of harm in terms of like global health and air pollution and so forth. So I'd love to give my email address where you can reach out if you're interested in energy. If energy is a topic that you want to learn more about and how you can play a part in that. We have a lot of solar projects happening in Jamaica and across the Caribbean. If you want to, perhaps professionally get into something like that, then I think that would be a great youth network to be a part of. So my email address is Rosalie, so it's ROS, and I suppose I could put it in the chat, Michael, but I'll say it now. So it's ROSHELLE, Rosalie _Pinnock, PINNOCK @UNMGCY.org. And I think I'll just put it in the chat as well, so you can have that. Yeah, and you can definitely research or Google UNMGCY and SDG 7 Youth Constituency. So yeah, I encourage you to reach out.
I'm seeing another question from CYA in Trinidad about how during COVID-19 and with the restrictions, how are you attracting young people? And I would say social media is our new superpower. Has always been the superpower, really. I think social media and young people leveraging the platforms is very, very, very crucial in both telling a story about what's happening, and then the more you tell that story, you can get assistance from, again, funding partners for projects, but also create a wider community. Persons who might have been, are in different countries. You have people from different, for example, the Caribbean has a large diaspora network. Using social media allows us to have connections with different people, different age groups. And right now, social media is the way to go. And we've been very, enthusiastic about using social media in terms of getting feedback also from young people as to what they want to see in advocacy, how they can contribute to advocacy efforts, and it has been very good. I know that Sydney and I have been working with Caribbean Girls Hack to try and increase the engagement on social media, particularly Instagram. We just actually finished promoting this event. IBMZ Day, we had this event which saw hundreds of young people being afforded the ability to learn tech skills that are in very high demand now. So and that all came from our social media activism, using graphics, video, engaging the persons, and I think now more than ever, it's the main tool that people can use to get involved. I'm thinking about how, as we're going into the event next week, in this week, Corey, thinking about how young people, I think you mentioned that there are different avenues for them to, if they want to get involved with the CGI network. From the session, in terms of what they're going to be discussing on the day, talking about youth-led activism, how can more young people get involved with the network?
Definitely. I think the way that I see the network and sort of the platform plugging into all of the work that you've mentioned, again, we talked about how elevation of issues is not enough, but it needs to be more of an engagement effort. And so I think, Rosalie, as your role as a moderator, and I think the other youth perspectives that are going to be part of the discussion, that's really where we can make a call to action for youth to get involved on these issues. And I think our network now is built of, we say leaders in government and business and civil society, but that does not mean or exclude the fact that youth and young people are a part of those positions and are a part of the communities that we want around the decision-making table. And so I think part of it that we mentioned is awareness building and inspiring, and helping build confidence of youth to get involved. But I think another part of it is bridging the gap between maybe the older generation and youth, in terms of how do we come together. And one thing that we're going to be talking about during the event is succession planning, of how can we move the skill sets and the knowledge that the generation now, or the older generation, has and is leading with, to those that are reimagining the way that things can happen in the future. And so we're going to be talking about bridging that gap. And in order to talk about bridging that gap, both sides kind of have to be at the table, whether that be listening in and tuning in, or reaching out to me or Rosalie to figure out how their perspective can actually be incorporated. And so I think all of those pieces are ways that we can work together to get more people involved.
Definitely. And CGH is really committed to, again, bridging that gap between young persons and the older generation, and especially, I will keep mentioning, but it's such an important issue, bridging the gender gap, and really the involvement of girls in high level decision making, at high level decision making positions, and giving them some inspiration in terms of seeing themselves as actively contributing and getting into tech. I mean, the technology sector sounds so daunting in terms of, okay, how am I going to enter this space? And even, especially if you're someone from a lower socioeconomic status, there are many barriers to you thinking that you're someone who belongs in this space. So Caribbean Girls has really been a really good nexus of getting young people involved in mobilization and getting them skills training, so that they can actually launch into those areas in tech. So we had such a good discussion. I'm so grateful for everybody coming in and really giving their perspective. And the event this week is going to be really, really good. I'm hoping to also pop into some, especially the Tuesday session on youth-led activism. So again, I just want to throw back to Gori to give people the final word in terms of how they can sign up, how they can get involved for the upcoming UNGA week.
Definitely. So a few ways to register for the event. The first is to email CGI Action Network at clintonfoundation.org, and my colleagues will send you the information and registration link through that email. Another way to learn more about every session and the times, the session descriptions, visit clintonfoundation.org, and then under the CGI or Clinton Global Initiative tag, tab, you can find all of the information that I mentioned today, as well as the link to the email. And then if not any of those avenues, of course, reach out to myself, Rosalie, or anyone on this call, and we can direct you to the right place.
Yes. Yes, thank you all so much. It's been a really good discussion. I think we really tapped into, you're bringing in Ashford with the grassroots level, what's actually happening on the ground with climate change, because that story is not usually told. And then also bringing in the ambassadors and Sydney working in sustainability and how we can bridge that gap and give young people a voice. So thank you so much. And, keep tuned to this space, because we'll be sharing many more, avenues for engagement so that people can get involved. Thank you.
And thank you, Michael, for a great host, because you were so. Thanks so much. It was a really nice talking to you all.
Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Thanks so much. Nice to meet everyone.
Nice to meet everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.